Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K110 Turning the Tides, episode 10 of book 1 Air. So we're approaching the end of the series now, and this is another really good episode. This one has tons of action, and lots of kind of different kind of tones of action scenes of like heroic ones with like the Air Kids getting their first chance to fight, sort of last stand kind of more tragic action scenes with like Lin. There's a lot of kind of like, oh wow, the hero's kind of lost moments, like Tenzin gets taken down at one point. Then you get these like cool saves when people come in at the last minute, like the Air Kids did, like Team Avatar does. Lots of really cool bending on display action. You can tell that this is sort of like a bit of a set piece episode because of what they do, like Pema being pregnant finally, like kind of that plot is like activated and it's at the worst possible time, but it's this kind of big moment for the family. It's like a Air Kids Tenzin's family focus episode in a way, and just so many things happen in this episode. But a lot of why this episode happens is because of like the kind of clever tactics from Amon, I suppose, in the previous episode, and how that like affects this episode. In that he took out Tarlok in the last episode, and because of that, it basically leaves the city with no real like defense and no real offense against the Equalist, because Tarlok was the only one who was really like actively opposing them, and especially with the way he had set things up, that like he was in charge of his own task force, he was basically in charge of the police force, he had complete control over all of that, and because he's now out of the picture, no one's really fighting against the Equalists. So Amon has taken out his greatest threat. The only one left is Korra, but we are still waiting to see when Korra is going to make her move against Amon. So that's kind of strong tactics on his part, in that he's really cleared the way now, that the only kind of key players he needs to get rid of now is the leadership of the city, and obviously he tries to do that here, and we see the other council members taken out, and it's only Tenzin who kind of survives his, or like gets away from his kind of capture attempt, and he's left in command of the city. And this happening just after you've got that kind of really nice family scene of him like with all the kids, with Pema, and you can see like that this is what it's all about for him. It's all about his family. This is what's important, that this is what he's going to have to place above everything else in terms of making his decisions. And now suddenly he's placed in charge of the city at the worst possible time, because the second that happens, bombs go off, airships come in. There's nothing he can do to really defend, because like Saikon should probably be making some moves. He should really be having the security high, but you can tell Saikon's not the best leader, and so he very much relies on Tenzin making all of the key moves. And really, if not for Tenzin making the decision to bring in the United Forces, there's no real action made to try and oppose the Equalists, because that's basically what happens here. We see the fall of Republic City because Tarlok just had so much of the defenses. There's nothing they can really do, because Amon's forces just completely counter the Metalbender police force so much, and Tarlok's task force seemingly just kind of like goes away because he's not present anymore. So it's a very bad situation for the city, and the way they set it up with all of this sort of politics stuff, it all, I think, makes sense. So it, I suppose, leads to that moment where Tenzin gets everyone out of the police station, and that's where our first kind of big fight sequence happens. And you get to see Tenzin do some really strong moves here, just kind of pushing back the mecha tanks, and given that he's doing it with just air, that's really impressive that he's able to do that. He doesn't seem to have the complete firepower to be able to just blow past all of them, but when he's left on his own, of course, he gets taken out relatively quickly. And if not for the saving of Team Avatar coming in, he would have been captured as well. But let's go back earlier on in the episode to get the first bit of, I suppose, romance drama kind of setup that we have with Asami and Mako. This is obviously a kind of controversial topic, because not many people like the romance in book 1, or Korra in general, really. I tend to not mind it too much in book 1 because it is confined for the most part to episode 5, and then it's just a scene here or there. This is this, and then I suppose the breakup scene of Asami and Mako in the next episode is really all there is kind of left. So it's not really a big focus here, but I would definitely say again that the problem with this, and the problem especially in book 2, they focus too much on drama instead of what I think relationships can actually do for characters, and that is actually have meaningful development for like two characters because they're in a romantic relationship. Whereas I really feel that the position that they took with Korra was to be like, let's just have drama happen around relationships. That's what the fandom wants, isn't it? When it really wasn't. Like, look at the key relationships, like Mei and Zuko, Sakasuki, Aang and Katara. There was no real romance drama as such based around them. The only like shipping stuff happened was like Zutara versus like Katang, but the Zutara thing really was just like kind of interpretation type thing. It wasn't really like an actual issue. This felt like they were trying to actually bring something like that into the show, and it just didn't work. That said, I don't think it's like awful here. It's just, I think, as the years have gone on, the fandom interpretation of this has always been weird to me, of just blaming Mako for like everything about the relationship stuff in every season, basically. And it sort of becoming the narrative that even the creators go for, that they blame Mako for it. When you really break it down, what happens in this episode, you really have to blame it all on Korra, and she sort of tends to get away like scot-free from the whole like Mako and Asami breaking up thing. She tends to get away scot-free, even though she was the one who initiated the kiss. You can question, did Mako kiss back or not, but for the most part, he's not really to blame for that incident happening. It's just this kind of weird situation where Asami finds out from Bolin that this happened, and she's kind of questioning why Mako never told her. But like from Mako's perspective, it's just like, because he kind of knows he didn't really do anything wrong as such, it's this weird situation for him where he's just like, should I tell Asami about this like kiss where nothing happened beyond it? She completely initiated it. It felt like if he brought that up, he's just bringing the issue to light faster, whereas like it comes up here and she happens to find about it, and it sort of makes him come across as if he's holding things back, when it's more like, this is where like the Asami side comes in, where like she is jealous in this episode, and you have to question the timing of like her bringing this up and this being her like focus at this point in time. And this is where like everyone's a little bit to blame. Korra's a bit to blame, Mako's a little bit to blame, and Asami's a bit to blame as well. Like why does she decide that this is the moment to kind of confront Mako about this and kind of have an attitude for most of the episode and be all like this? And especially like I think the way she brings it up, it feels a little bit like kind of aspects of episode 5. Like this is Asami making her kind of like teen drama her teen drama scene within the season, kind of like how jealous she kind of acts here, and like just the fact that like Pema leaves immediately and knows that this is basically what's going down. And like what they bring up here I think is quite interesting, and I like that Mako just straight away is just like, my friend was captured by like the evil villain basically. How did you want me to act? And I think her response kind of shows that it is very much her being jealous, and like she's kind of like, I like Korra, but like why didn't you tell me about this stuff? It's kind of like, okay, you're kind of skipping around that like she was captured. He would have felt very, very similarly if you were the one who was captured. We saw how he was when Bolin was captured earlier on in the season. That's kind of how Mako tends to act with these type of things. Yes, it is a fact, it is a plot point that like it's meant to emphasize like how much he cares about Korra, and that this is him sort of beginning to realize that he actually has stronger feelings for Korra than Asami perhaps, and he's trying to figure that out. So it's kind of like, yes, everyone's a bit to blame, but I don't get why the narrative has always been Mako is the one to blame for like all of this. and it becomes a factor in book 2, and it really affects his character as we go on. It just, the way the writers seem to like use the kind of fandom's reaction to him in the early seasons and just kind of beat him down for like a couple of seasons with that. Whereas like Asami and Korra, who are equally involved in all this relationship drama stuff, get away with it. Like they're just like free come the end of the series of all of this. But Mako, even in the comics right now, is still like tortured in a way by just like these two girls and the weird way that his relationships with them have been written. So I'm hoping Turf Wars Part 3 finally gets past all of this, because this has been a factor that's like affected his relationship with both of them basically since the early seasons. Like it's been so long since like Mako has had kind of like natural interactions with like Korra and Asami, and it just feels like they just completely bundled what they were trying to do with the character and just blame. The issue I have is that they blame what is writing problems, the writer's direct problems of the way they chose to approach the romances, and they blame it on the character and start to actually present the character as being like the problem, whereas it's actually their writing intent. So it's this weird thing where the writers actually like put the blame off themselves and put it onto the character, and like most of the fandom have kind of jumped on board that sort of narrative. But thankfully, like it's not a huge focus of the episode. Like it's that, and then we get the scene later on where they get into the car and Asami tells Mako to sit in the back, and it's just her being kind of like angry, annoyed at him, but not really addressing like the problem with their relationship as such either. So obviously it's Mako's kind of like, he has to figure out kind of where he stands with the two of them, and it's next episode where that finally happens. And I think it's resolved okay. It's of course, like it's never a great thing when you have like breakups and characters getting together and so on all the time, but I think they managed to do this like fairly okay. The big problems that I would have with the romance on Korra as a whole would definitely be with book 2. So when we get into the book 2 episodes, like you're going to see me being pretty positive about most of the episodes because I like book 2. Where I'm going to be negative is when it comes to a lot of the romance stuff and what on earth the writers were trying to do with regards to romance in book 2. But we'll get to that. Coming back to this episode, we do get, I suppose, the reformation of Team Avatar here. They get in the Avatar and they know that they have to be out on patrol. Attacks are coming in. They have to do something. And their big move is to save Tenzin from being captured. And we get some really cool action stuff here. Asami gets a big chance to show just how strong she is. Takes down a bunch of Equalists to save Tenzin and get him back in the fight. Mako does some really cool lightning redirection, and we see him do some like pretty cool flips to kind of fend off the mecha tanks and just in general hold them back with fire. Bo Lin's actually quite impressive in this fight, even though he doesn't get too much of a focus. You see, like he sends huge rocks flying at the mecha tanks, and like he directly like smashes one over. The one that Korra takes out by putting the water into the exhaust pipes, he kind of knocks over. Tenzin comes out and sends one flying from underneath onto like the roof of a building. It's a really cool sequence that they get to really just go all out because they're fighting kind of like machines. So that was actually a really cool thing to see. But just as they think there's like a level of like, oh, finally some stability this day, Mako points out that an attack is coming on Air Temple Island, and immediately we shift over to like Lin's been left on the island because he's asked her to kind of guard his family, and she's just there with a couple of ordered White Lotus guards, and the lieutenant is leading like a full airship of Equalists to attack the island, and they're so far away from it. So there's so much tension, there's so much action happening in the episode. It's so fast paced, but it's really well done. And here, like, obviously, Lin gets a chance to really shine here using the metal bending whips, and then especially when she starts to actually use her earth bending, she really starts to take out some of those Equalists. And it's unfortunate that, of course, part of it is also the the Order of the White Lotus guards being very diminished and, you know, not really feeling like they're being given the level of respect that they should be as being members of the Order of the White Lotus. I get they're never going to be like Iroh, Boomy, Zhong level of characters in terms of powerful benders. But they should be like elite kind of fighters. They should be sort of like Dai Li sort of style kind of characters where they're not the best earthbenders in the world, but they're skilled enough that they're part of this organization and they should be able to take out equalists. So like I think it's just all about how they chose to write the kind of power dynamics of this fight. In that I get they're outnumbered and they're maybe like the equalists are quicker, as we've sort of got throughout the entire season, that the equalists have sort of an advantage over the benders because they're so quick and can just she-block them. But what they should have done here is basically, like, I think just set it out that, like, here are 30 people plus the lieutenant coming after, you know, basically 5 Orders White Lotus guards and Lin. Lin is guarding the main plaza, so those 5 have to fend off, like, 30 opponents. And I think the way they should have wrote it is that, like, the guards, very clearly they show them like 4-on-1. They manage to take out about 20 of the equalists before they go down. So they've basically evened the odds pretty good by basically getting that 4-on-1 advantage. That it's taken effort from the equalists to take out the Ordered White Lotus guards. I get there's not a ton of time in the episode to focus on them, but it makes the whole kind of, I think, just opinion that comes out of the entire show of just no one cares about the Order of the White Lotus in Korra because they're just not important. It makes that such a true thing to say, that they were one of the weak parts of Korra, that the Order of the White Lotus was just made into this like joke almost because of moments like this where they make a sacrifice. It's cool. And like by the end of the episode they really do like sacrifice themselves. And that's a cool little moment to give them, but show how powerful they are as well, that they aren't just goons. There's a reason they're a member of the Order of White Lotus, even if the Order of the White Lotus isn't as exclusive as it used to be. And then that still leaves you the kind of option of, for like, give Lin the like 10-on-1 and the lieutenant fight, where there's enough people for the air kids to come in and even the odds even more. They just, the dynamics of this fight could have been done better to, I think, make the Order of White Lotus look better. In that it still gives Lin the hero moment here of taking everyone out before the lieutenant shocks her, and then the air kids get to kind of, you know, clean up the rest of them when they come in. And it's a cool moment because it's meant to be, I think, a sort of different style repeat of how Tenzin was saved. Here's one of the older characters who's been taken out, on the verge of being taken away back to Amon to get their bending taken away, and then Team Avatar comes in to save Tenzin. And who is it that saves Lin? It's Jinora, then Iki comes in, then Milo, and they all get their kind of moments to shine of, like, Jinora sends the lieutenant flying like into the roof of a building and he's like miles away, so that's a very powerful blast from her. Iki shows really good control of the air scooter as she just knocks over a bunch of people. And then they just give Milo the whole, like, wild man Milo state kind of moment of just coming in, fart bending, blasting people left and right. Kind of showing that, like, I think when Milo is older, he's going to be a very, very powerful bender because of his unique style. And when he gets to, I suppose, raw physicality, he's going to be like an incredibly interesting kind of fighter to watch. And he gets a really cool chance to shine here and saving Lin. And I like that when Tenzin comes in, he's kind of like, you let them fight? What were you doing? What were you thinking? But she's just kind of like, you should be like praising them because I would have been gone if not for them. So they get their cool moment to shine. And then, of course, Pema's gone into labor at this point. And we see the birth of Rohan as everyone arrives back at the temple. And again, it's like the start of the episode where we had Tenzin looking in on his family, and then as he goes to work, he's ambushed. It's that case of, like, Korra being like, I hate to break up this moment, but there's more ships coming. We can't linger on this. We have to just immediately get out. And it's you know, it's kind of dark moment of just like Pema's just given birth and immediately she has to run away just to save her kids and so on. And the birth of Rohan, it's a nice moment. It's cool that we get to see this. The unfortunate thing is that I feel it's a scene that is kind of lacking in impact because the one thing that they set up with Rohan from the first episode with Pema being pregnant is he going to be an airbender or not? And given that the show has a 3-year time skip to get to the point where Rohan is like 3.5, like 4, something like that, I suppose he is more closer to to 4, given that he's born in book 1. Given that happens, why don't we ever learn that? Because Rohan, we see him in other scenes, but he never like is a focus. And I get that he's so young, you can't really focus on him that much. But the one thing you have for him is to confirm at some point in the series if he's a bender or not. To make it kind of confirm if like Katara is right in her like prediction in the first episode. To give kind of Pema that moment of just kind of like, oh no, there's another airbender in my life, or potentially like at some point confirmation that like, oh no, he's never shown any airbending, so I think he's a non-bender. That's cool, like me. And that would have been just a cool little moment. You don't have to characterize Rohan all that much because it's difficult to really do that when they're that young. But it's the one thing you had for him, and given that it still hasn't been answered, it's like, is it a focus? Do you even see that as any sort of a mystery? It kind of makes you question a little bit, like, did you even need to have Pema be pregnant as an aspect of her character at the start of the series? Does Rohan even matter too much as a character? I suppose it's a cool thing just to show that like there aren't too many airbenders, and so showing the birth of one and the drama around the birth of one is a notable thing. But again, because you never confirm he's an airbender or not, that sort of takes something away from it. But it's still a cute moment of just there is a little moment to linger on it of just Tenzin comes in, Rohan's there, he invites the other kids to come in and see their new brother. Iki gets a really nice moment to just kind of talk to him. Milo's happy to have a new brother. Janora's kind of like, can I name him, and so on. And it's fun. It's a nice thing. And as I said, the Korra moment of her kind of like unfortunately having to break up such a nice moment, but there's serious stuff happening here. The family has to escape. This is them committing to like, we have to leave. And Tenzin and Korra have that moment of just kind of like, I know you want to fight, but this isn't us giving up. I've called the United Forces in, and she just accepts like, okay, I have to be patient. And it's a sense of her growing of like, she knows she doesn't need to just jump into a fight and potentially get herself captured at this point. Tenzin has set up some stuff here. He has to let his family go. They have to hide out from now on. And so we get the escape from the island, Naga swatting like the lieutenant away, which I think brings the lieutenant getting wrecked count up to about 5 or 6. Because obviously we forgot to count that he got like pretty heavily bloodbanked by Tarlok in the previous episode. Janora hits him in this episode, then Naga hits him. Combined with all the falling off the roof of the air temple, getting smashed by Korra in the early episodes, he's taken quite a beating already, and we'll see what happens to the lieutenant as we go forward. But they make it off the island, and they kind of obviously go into hiding, and I like at the end of the episode that it is this kind of it's this tragic moment. Like Korra's upset about this, that she's here, but the city's fallen to her kind of main enemy. That it's happened on her watch, and she can't really do anything. She just has to wait, and it's a struggle to see what happens. And it leads, of course, to how Tenzin and Co get away, which is, I think, a combination, both one of the strongest moments of the episode, but also like one of the most baffling moments in the series of just, wow, what were you thinking in episode 12 doing what you did? But we'll get to that. Let's talk about the specifics of what happens. They're being chased by airships. Oogie can't quite, get away from them. Lin decides that she has to make this sacrifice. It's important for the remaining airbenders in the world to get away. This is something she has to do for her friend. She makes the choice to go over to the airships, and she's going to try and take them out to let Tenzin get away. It's her hero moment, and I think the sort of conclusion sort of moment for her arc in this season of going from this character you kind of actively dislike because of how like grumpy and antagonistic she's being towards Korra, for very little reason. Like, yes, Korra kind of messes up the city in the first episode, but Lynn's a bit overboard with, I think, how she kind of handles Korra and just dismissing her in like episode 4. But she gradually turns around as you see her kind of accept that Korra is actually somewhat similar to her. She learns to kind of respect Korra for how powerful she is and that she's tough as nails, basically. They kind of get an opportunity to work together in that fight scene in episode 6. Work together in episode 7 on the investigation. And there's a sort of trust that's kind of developed here, as well as setting up the like her history, why she's a bit like upset with everyone because of potentially the whole Tenzin issue, but how they've become friends again. And this episode, I think, cements it, kind of showing you that she's not just this kind of grumpy, angry kind of chief of police, that she kind of cares about the people she's close to, and she's willing to put herself on the line for Tenzin's family, Tenzin himself, for Korra, and she's willing to make this sacrifice. And it's a moment here, her kind of like destroying the airships, that really cements her as this hero character and a complete fan favorite, where going into book 2 she is one of the most popular characters. Now, I disagree with the premise of like the criticism of book 2 of like, oh, here's the second book, it doesn't really feature Lin all that much. Like, Lin isn't a like super main character in the same way as like Tenzin is. Tenzin, I think, is on a higher level than Lin. Lin is in that kind of like minor character, but is on the higher level of the minor characters, who can be a focus at times, but isn't going to be a factor in every single season. So I understand why she's not a huge focus in book 2, and I actually like the little bits and pieces we have with her in book 2. In that she definitely felt like the sort of character where, like, no, she didn't need a focus in every single season. Book 2 is kind of like pretty much the only book where she's not a super focus. Book 3, she gets her own arc. Book 4, she kind of gets her own arc. And book 1, she obviously becomes the character that people really like. So I'm okay with that, because like, it's not like she gets more of an arc than like Mako does over the course of the book, and he's like a main character. She gets more than Asami does. So I've never really understood the criticism that just because she's not in book 2, she was kind of like mishandled in that book. But it's absolutely a strong moment of her taking down that first ship, going to the second one, doing enough to like damage it and force them to sort of retreat to, I suppose, deal with her. But it's also a very tragic one, that you just see her like completely get knocked out by the electric bolo thing. And, Milo says, that lady's my hero. And they're aware of the sacrifice that she's made to let them get away. The unfortunate thing about it is that I don't think it's overly diminished, but it is somewhat diminished by what they choose to do with regards to the family getting away, in that this episode makes it look like they just get away. No one's pursuing them. But by episode 12, they're just captured somehow. It's never revealed how, when, did something go wrong. Amon just has them somehow. And it's just this baffling moment of like, what were they thinking with that one? It's one of the most clear-cut moments of just, you needed 13 episodes, didn't you? You made the decision to do 12 when you needed 13, and this was one of the things that had to be cut out. We'll discuss in like episode 12, I think, a lot of the stuff that probably was needed, and how I think one more episode in book 1 really would have fixed all of its issues. And how a lot of the issues are sort of rooted to that last episode, as we'll discuss when we get to it. And as I said, like, nothing can really take away from just the music, the action of her flying across to the first airship, taking it out, jumping across to the second one, and how like epic that is. But at the same time, no explanation given to why she made the sacrifice to let them get away, but they don't actually get away. It's just kind of like, so what did she do that for? If they just pursued her anyway, it's pursued Tenzin's family anyway. It's always been one of the weirdest, like, you just want us to accept that, okay, moments. But they go further in that, like, we cut then to Amon and him offering her, like, tell me where the avatar is and I'll let you keep your bending. If not, your bending's going away. But I love how they shoot this, they show this as if it's basically a death scene. Lynn getting her bending taken away is the fall of a hero. It's our first, like, pretty big main character getting their bending taken away. This is a huge, huge moment for this to happen. And they treat it with the respect that it needs to be treated with, that this is one of our big, big characters, one of the threats to Amon being taken down by him. And just the slow motion, like looking up at the sky, he takes the bending away and she just collapses to the ground. Her bending is now gone. What are we going to do? That's what I think is so impressive about this episode, how they really managed to turn Lynn into that complete hero character, and a lot of it is just down to this episode and how well they treated the character. And it just leaves us in this place of, like, we've lost one of our main characters, they don't have their bending anymore. We're just waiting for General Iroh to appear, and that's the last big thing in the episode. We see him, the United Forces on their way. It's General Iroh, as they confirm. So just the name is cool, but then the voice is just like, it's not Dave Vasco, it's the voice of Zuko. It's Zuko's voice. And I remember the slight debate within the fandom at the time of just like, are we happy that it's the same voice, or are we like slightly like a little bit like annoyed that like we're voicing a character who's like 15 years older basically than Zuko, but he has the exact same voice. So, is that okay? And I think in the end, like, it's like, okay, we'll accept the nostalgia thing for such a kind of like nostalgia sort of heavy character with the Iroh name and the Zuko voice. We're not going to have too big of an issue with that, but you know, it was just something. But it's such a cool moment to just be like, okay, here comes the reinforcements. We're going to get a big battle. We're going to get to see like Zuko's grandson here go into action. This is going to be awesome. And he's just like, I want to work with the Avatar. It's so cool to end it like that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 10. Great action-packed episode. One of my favorites from book 1 for sure. Like episode 8, episode 10, and I think most of episode 11 I think are to me some of the strongest episodes. I think overall it probably for me is between 10 and 8 for the best episode of book 1, but we'll discuss that maybe a little bit more once we get through discussing all of the episodes. But yeah, that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye.